I couldn't sleep at all because of the tension, and ended up sitting on the sofa until 6 a.m. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from Hayden, my daughter Carol's husband. It seemed that my granddaughter had been born safely. "Ted, wake up. Carol did it. We're going to the hospital." I woke up my husband, Ted, who was sleeping next to me, and hurried to get ready. Carol, Hayden. When we arrived at the hospital room, there was Carol, Hayden, and one more, a tiny life that needed a name. "Have you decided on a name yet?" "Not yet. We didn't know the gender, so we planned to decide after the baby was born. By the way, it's a girl." "Really? I hope you give her a wonderful name." My granddaughter was sleeping in Carol's arms, lying on the bed. Looking at her reminded me of Carol's own baby days. "Mom, would you like to hold her?" "Can I?" "Then, yes, I'd love to." Her sleeping face, the weight of her little body, and even her scent, everything was so familiar. Her pure and adorable presence naturally brought a soft smile to my face. "Look, it's Grandma and Grandpa." I was about to hand the tiny life over to Ted, but that's when it happened. He started sweating profusely and shaking uncontrollably. "What's wrong?" Keep her away from me." What was happening? I thought I misheard him, but when I looked at their faces, both Carol and Hayden's eyes were wide open in shock. It was obvious I hadn't misheard anything. "Dad, what are you saying? Are you feeling unwell?" "No, it's not that. I feel a burning heat coming from her. It's like that terrifying heat from the fire. I don't want to remember it." "Ted, is there anything I can do to help?" Ted is blind. 3 years ago, there was a massive fire at the chemical plant where Ted worked. He was unlucky enough to suffer burns to his eyes during the accident. Although his life was spared, he lost his sight forever. "Emily, don't worry, I'm fine for now." But his heart remained as kind and bright as ever. How much anguish, struggle, and effort had it taken to get here? I could imagine it, but I could never truly understand it. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. I've gotten used to it by now. Don't worry so much." He always said that, but how could I ever truly be at ease? I was always quietly worrying about him, both physically and emotionally. Despite Ted's unfortunate circumstances, he had a unique talent. He could sense the true intentions of others through conversation. According to him, it was just a feeling, not some kind of supernatural power. But from an outsider's perspective, it was impressive enough to be mistaken for one. It's widely known, and even scientifically supported, that losing one sense can heighten others, particularly hearing. In Ted's case, his natural sensitivity to others' emotions became even sharper after losing his sight. Because of this, both Carol and I had developed a habit of seeking his judgment whenever we faced a dilemma. He was simply that reliable. One recent example was when Carol introduced her boyfriend to us. It happened about a week ago. "Let me introduce him. This is my boyfriend, Hayden. Nice to meet you. I'm Hayden. Carol always speaks highly of you." This young man named Hayden was polite, well-dressed, and the perfect example of a gentleman. Whether it was his confidence or his ability to keep his true self in check, he easily became part of the conversation. In contrast, Carol seemed more nervous. It was understandable. Dad had a knack for reading between the lines, and if anything seemed off, he wouldn't hesitate to bring it up later. While Hayden knew about Ted's blindness, he obviously had no idea about this special talent, even without relying on Ted. There was nothing about Hayden that raised red flags. If anything, his words reflected thoughtful consideration for Ted, which left a very positive impression on me. Carol and Hayden, it turned out, had met as colleagues and grown closer through work and shared experiences. Ted listened intently to their story. As night fell, Ted finally shared his thoughts about Hayden. "I don't know about his looks, but he seems like a good man." Hearing those words, both Carol and I let out a big sigh of relief. Of course, it was a sigh of reassurance. On a whim, I decided to describe Hayden's appearance to Ted, using a well-known celebrity as an example. "With that personality and those looks, he's too perfect. Women are bound to flock to him," Ted said with a wry smile. From that day on, Hayden often visited our home with Carol. Even now, he's attentively looking out for Ted, proving himself to be a man without fault. With him, I felt truly relieved and happy from the bottom of my heart, knowing Carol would be in good hands. One day, a simple question came to mind. "May I ask you something?" "Of course. What is it?" "You seem like such a wonderful person, so I'd like to know more about your parents. Would you mind sharing?" After a brief pause, Hayden gave a hesitant smile before apologetically refusing. "I'm sorry, but my parents passed away in an accident when I was very young." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I didn't mean to bring up something painful." Still, his demeanor remained unchanged. "No, it's all right. It's something I've come to terms with. But actually, would it be okay if I shared a little with you?" I was deeply moved by his thoughtfulness, and felt compelled to show him the same respect. "Of course. Please, go ahead. Because my parents are gone, I often think about how much I owe them. I never got the chance to truly repay them. If I ever get the opportunity to pay it forward, I feel like it would make them proud, and it might bring me some peace as well." To me, his confession sounded like a cry from the heart, a flood of emotions that I couldn't fully comprehend. "That's why, in a way, I see you both as a second chance. This time, I want to make sure I don't have any regrets." As he finished speaking, I noticed Ted standing silently at the edge of my vision, listening to Hayden's words with a gentle nod. To me, that was the ultimate validation. Some time passed, and Carol and Hayden got married. After their wedding, Hayden moved into our home. Even after marriage, he continued to look out for us, especially Ted's well-being. However, there was one thing that worried me. Our home had a southern-facing garden elevated slightly above the road, and recently, we had been finding trash scattered there. It happened 3 times last week and twice this week. I thought it might have been crows or some other birds, but the frequency felt too deliberate to be a coincidence. Still, since it wasn't causing any major harm, I decided to keep it to myself for the time being. By the time early summer had passed, Carol and Hayden shared some exciting news. They were expecting a baby. It was truly joyous news. At the same time, while it was manageable having Hayden move in alone, adding another family member made us seriously consider moving. With Ted's vision impairment, a barrier-free home seemed like a sensible option. One evening, while we were discussing this, we heard the rustling of leaves in the garden. What was that? It wasn't the gentle rustling caused by the wind. It sounded rough, as if something or someone had passed through. A feeling of unease crept over me. I couldn't keep relying on Ted for everything in moments like this. I grabbed the edge of the curtain and flung it open. "Ah, what is it? What's wrong?" On the greenery, in the darkness, lay a dead crow. At that moment, I was certain. The garbage in our yard wasn't the work of birds. It was deliberate and malicious. I immediately called the police. After they removed the dead crow, I explained the situation to Ted, Carol, and Hayden. "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" Up until now, the trash wasn't much, just enough to look like it could have been blown in by the wind. The garbage station isn't far either, so I assumed it might be the work of birds. All right, let's think about what we can do. There's only so much we can handle ourselves. Maybe we could raise the fence higher, but that wouldn't solve the root problem. Then how about installing security cameras? After some back and forth, we decided to set up security cameras. About a week after the cameras were installed, Carol discovered more garbage in the yard. When we checked the footage, the culprit was shockingly easy to identify. The security footage showed a woman with long black hair tossing a garbage bag into the yard with her right hand. Her figure and even her face were captured clearly. Carol let out a small gasp. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. She spent a moment thinking, but couldn't recall anything, and decided to wait until Hayden got home to confirm. Later that evening, when Hayden returned, we showed him the footage. His response was startling. "That's Lucy. She's my subordinate." As he explained, Lucy had been pursuing him for some time, causing him considerable trouble. At first, he tried to turn her down gently, but her behavior escalated. Eventually, he told her about Carol and their relationship, making it clear he wasn't interested. It wasn't hard to imagine that this rejection might have led to her outrageous actions. Oh, that's why she seemed familiar. But do you think the police will take this seriously? You hear stories about stalkers and how hard it is to get action taken. With this kind of solid evidence, I think they will. Let's at least try explaining the situation. To my relief, the police took the matter seriously. Lucy was issued a stern warning and was made to sign an agreement to stay away from Hayden and Carol. She was also transferred to a position in another state by her company. Her motive, as it turned out, was harassment. However, one unexpected detail came to light. Her malice wasn't directed at Hayden. Instead, it was aimed at the woman who had taken him from her, Carol. With Lucy gone, peace returned to our home. Time flew by, and before we knew it, Carol's belly had grown, and it was time for her to be admitted to the hospital for delivery. Preparing for her hospital stay, gathering postpartum essentials, and running countless errands brought back memories of the past. When I gave birth to Carol, it was a difficult labor. Though it happened over 20 years ago, it felt as vivid as yesterday. Now I was in the role of watching over her, a thought that filled me with deep emotion. Carol's labor pains began late at night. Ted and I stayed home while Hayden accompanied her to the hospital. "I'm excited," Ted said. His words carried a mix of genuine anticipation and a tinge of sadness. It was no surprise he wouldn't be able to see his granddaughter's face. As I hesitated on how to respond, Ted seemed to sense my dilemma and murmured softly, "I've never regretted losing my sight, but this time, it stings a little. I really wanted to see our granddaughter's face. In that case, I'll see her enough for both of us. Remember, I promised to be your eyes." Even saying it doesn't change anything, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. Once again, it felt like Ted could see straight through me. Even with this odd talent of mine, I can't see our granddaughter's face. "Emily, will you share a drink with me tonight?" Of course, I'd be happy to. There was only so much I could do. But if I could bring even a little comfort to Ted, I would. That night, I couldn't sleep from the tension. I found myself on the sofa when 6 a.m. rolled around. Checking my smartphone, I saw a message from Hayden. Our granddaughter had been born safely. "Ted, wake up. Carol did it. We're going to the hospital." I woke Ted, who was sleeping beside me, and hurried to get ready. It was a weekday morning, so the hospital seemed quieter than usual. The corridors were sparsely populated, and I could see some patients in pajamas near the shop. Among them, one figure stood out, a shadowy presence that I couldn't quite describe. There was nothing overtly suspicious about them, yet they seemed out of place, exuding an unsettling aura. Ted seemed to sense it too. Something feels off. Is someone there? When I told Ted about the shadowy figure, he murmured, "Don't get too close," while tapping his white cane on the floor. Even as I kept glancing toward the mysterious person, I walked over and took Ted's hand. Carol, Hayden. When we reached the hospital room, there were two familiar faces, and one more tiny life that needed a name. "Good morning, you two. How are you feeling?" "Good morning. We're fine. The baby's doing great too." "That's wonderful to hear." As Ted spoke, he frowned slightly, so I helped him sit down. I asked if he was feeling unwell, but he assured me it wasn't anything serious. For now, we focused on sharing the joy of the moment. "Have you decided on a name?" "Not yet. Since we didn't know the baby's gender, we thought we'd decide after the birth. By the way, it's a girl. Is that so? I hope you choose a beautiful name for her." Our granddaughter was sleeping peacefully in Carol's arms. Looking at her, I couldn't help but recall Carol's own baby days. "Mom, would you like to hold her?" "Can I?" "Then, yes, I'd love to." Her sleeping face, her weight, even her scent, it all felt so familiar. Her pure and adorable presence naturally brought a soft smile to my face. "Look, Grandma and Grandpa are here." I was about to hand the tiny bundle to Ted, but that's when it happened. He broke into a sweat, his entire body trembling violently. "What's wrong?" "Keep her away from me." What was going on? Thinking I must have misheard him, I glanced at Carol and Hayden. Both of them were wide-eyed in shock, confirming I hadn't misheard anything. "Dad, what are you saying? Are you feeling all right?" "No, it's not that." I felt a burning heat. It reminded me of the fire. That terrifying heat from the fire. Could it be that he sensed something from the baby? I handed the baby back to Carol and sat next to Ted. Gradually, his trembling subsided, but he was still breathing heavily, his shoulders heaving. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I've calmed down a bit." "Emily, can we talk for a moment?" "Of course." Following his lead, I left the hospital room with him. A short walk brought us to a small rest area, and I let him know about it. "Sorry for startling everyone. The baby is fine. Can you tell me what happened?" Ted paused for a moment before continuing in a quiet voice. "I think I picked up on someone's emotions nearby. It was more intense than anything I've ever felt. Burning hatred, anger, it was overwhelming. It felt so raw that I lost control for a moment." "Sorry, the timing couldn't have been worse. There's no need to apologize. It's not something you can control." But anger and hatred, unfortunately, I had a suspicion about who could be responsible for such feelings. Lucy. Despite the police warning, the agreement to stay away, and her transfer out of state, could she really have returned? The odds seemed slim, but the thought lingered, refusing to leave my mind. "Do you think it could be her?" Before I could finish my sentence, Ted interrupted. "Yay, it's possible. And you mentioned seeing someone in the lobby earlier, right? She might still be nearby. Can you check for me?" "All right." I asked Hayden to help with the search. I couldn't bring Ted or Carol along, and I couldn't risk missing her on my own. Hayden, knowing Lucy's face well and being free to move around, was the perfect person to accompany me. We searched every area accessible to the public, but she was nowhere to be found. Eventually, we returned to the hospital room. Still, if this was just my imagination, that would be a relief. In any case, the hospital is a safe place. There are plenty of people around, and I'll stay with them the whole time. "Emily, you and Ted should go home and rest." "You're right." "All right, Hayden, I'm counting on you to take care of Carol." "Of course. If anything happens, I'll let you know. With some reluctance, Ted and I returned home, suppressing our unease. I didn't tell Ted, but I wished I could have spent more time with our granddaughter. I kept wondering who she resembled more, Carol or Hayden, and what name they would choose for her. That night, I knew I wouldn't sleep well again. Hours later, as the evening settled in, Ted suddenly spoke ominous words. It's happening again. That burning heat. What is this? He insisted it wasn't a physical ailment. That left only one possibility: his strange ability had picked up on another wave of intense emotions. The troubling part was the strength of those emotions. At this point, only one possibility came to mind, and it was extremely dangerous. I needed to seriously consider what to do. Part of me wanted to call the police immediately, but I didn't have enough concrete evidence. If I confronted the person myself, there was a chance I wouldn't just lose, I might not even come out alive. That's when I suddenly remembered the security cameras. Right, maybe I can find something there. I checked the footage, but nothing was captured. Just as I was about to give up, like a single thread of hope descending from the heavens, I received a message on my smartphone. It was from Hayden. Is everything all right over there? Until now, I had unconsciously excluded him from my considerations, wanting to avoid disrupting his first moments with Carol and the baby. But with no other options, I had to rely on him. I explained everything to him honestly, and he responded briefly, "Got it. I'm coming over now." I was overwhelmed with helplessness. I hated that I couldn't do anything in such a critical situation, that all I could do was wait. Even though I knew this wasn't my fault, I couldn't shake the feeling of frustration. About 30 minutes later, Hayden arrived. According to Ted, the heat he felt was getting stronger. If taken at face value, it meant that danger was drawing closer. Without delay, Hayden and I began searching around the house, and I grabbed a broom for self-defense. The sun had set, and while it wasn't completely dark, the dim light cast unsettling shadows everywhere. The atmosphere only heightened my sense of fear. Both Hayden and I caught the sound. It was unmistakable. It came from the back of the house, and it was accompanied by an undeniable human presence. "Emily, I'll go check the back. Please call the police just in case." I followed his instructions, went inside, and called the police. Suspect apprehended. Repeat, suspect apprehended. Unbelievably, there really was someone lurking there. When I caught a glimpse of the side profile, I recognized her instantly. It was Lucy. She didn't resist or make a scene, as multiple officers escorted her to the police car. One officer mentioned that she had an accelerant and a lighter in her possession. The horrifying implication of what she intended was clear. The realization that we were safe made my legs give out beneath me. "Are you all right?" Hayden asked. "Yes, I'm fine." I guess my legs just gave out from relief. While Hayden's brave actions were remarkable, it was Ted's unusual ability that truly saved us. By the time everything settled, Ted had fully calmed down and was back to his usual bright self. I have to admit, as much as I have mixed feelings about it, I'm glad nothing happened. Maybe I'm more extraordinary than I thought. He joked. "Extraordinary doesn't even cover it. You're practically a superhero." I replied, "Well, if I were younger, maybe I could have used this to help others." He said with a chuckle. Later, we learned that on that day, Lucy had indeed snuck into the hospital where Carol was staying, looking for an opportunity to cause harm. Even worse, her target wasn't Hayden or Carol. It was the newborn granddaughter, Mia. The motive behind her actions stemmed from a grudge fueled by her own circumstances. Rumors of her stalking behavior had led to her being transferred, losing her standing, and ultimately being forced to resign. On the day of the incident, overwhelmed by the large number of people in the hospital. She abandoned her initial plan and left. However, dissatisfied with the outcome, she decided instead to set fire to our home. The burning heat Ted had sensed was, without a doubt, a manifestation of Lucy's malicious intent. She was taken into police custody and is now in detention, awaiting the appropriate punishment for her actions. Just as we thought peace had finally returned, something unexpected happened. Two people claiming to be Lucy's parents showed up at our doorstep. We deeply apologize for the trouble our daughter has caused. Once she is released, we plan to take her back to her hometown and keep a close watch on her. It didn't seem like they had come seeking forgiveness, but unfortunately, Ted wasn't home. He had left earlier that morning, with Hayden driving him to the hospital to pick up Carol and our granddaughter, Mia. While their words conveyed sincerity, I couldn't discern their true intentions without Ted there. Naturally, I didn't invite them inside. Instead, I kept the conversation at the door, exchanged polite words, and saw them off. After they left, a chilling question crossed my mind. How did they know where we live? The realization spurred me to push forward with our previously discussed plan to move. Once Carol was discharged from the hospital, and our family grew by one more member, I shared everything with them openly. That's unsettling. If that's the case, let's hurry and move, Hayden said decisively. Ted took the lead, joining Hayden and me as we visited different neighborhoods. He used his unusual ability to read the atmosphere of each place we considered. Fortunately, we found a location and a house that all of us felt good about. We decided that the five of us would start our new life there. It was only then that I realized something about myself. I hadn't fully trusted Ted's unique abilities before, but this incident changed everything. He had saved the lives of our entire family. It wasn't just a skill anymore, it truly felt like a supernatural gift. The new house was a comfortable, barrier-free home. Ted loved it, and it was perfectly suited for our growing family, including little Mia. For the first time in a while, I felt that Carol, Hayden, and I could all live with peace of mind. The threats that loomed over us were gone. Now I look forward to starting this new chapter of our lives in this home. Still, hey, Hayden, do you have a minute? Of course. Is there something you need help with? No, not that. I just wanted to ask, do you really feel okay about living with us? I mean, this should be the happiest time of your life. You're newlyweds with a newborn daughter. That's what this is about. Hayden smiled softly. I've told you before, haven't I? I wanted to give back. I've always longed for what it means to have real family. And this is exactly what I've dreamed of. No, this is perfect for me. I didn't know what to say, but he continued. And more than that, I'm truly grateful to both of you. Grateful. Yes. If Ted hadn't been there, who knows what would have happened to us? And Emily, you trusted him, which is why everything turned out okay. If either of you had faltered, the outcome might have been very different. That's why just having the chance to give back is more than enough for me. Thank you. This time, I didn't need Ted's gift to tell. He wasn't lying.
Oh, Sarah. Did you get the gift I sent you? The lobster must have been delicious, right? I replied to Karen's words. My eldest son ate it all by himself. What? Karen's voice trembled as she responded, and she suddenly started panicking. Go check on your son, please. I retorted to her frantic request. No way. And dismissed it. However, reluctantly following her advice, I headed towards the bathroom near my eldest son's bedroom and witnessed an unbelievable scene. My name is Sarah. I'm turning 60 this year. I married my husband at 19 and was blessed with 3 children. At 20, I had my eldest son, Mike, and at 23, I gave birth to twin daughters, Betty and Emma. Now, all 3 are married. My eldest daughter lives far away in Spain. It was lonely when she left, but my younger daughter moved to the next town after getting married and now lives in an apartment near her in-laws. And my eldest son's family has been living with us. It's a blessing to have 2 of them nearby. In this rural area, it's common for families to live with their eldest son, and multi-generational households aren't rare. The tradition of passing down the family home to the eldest son is still strong here. Naturally, we plan to hand our house over to our eldest son. My husband owns several properties. So, we have a decent passive income. Yet, we live modestly and happily. We don't indulge in luxuries, but we can afford gifts for our grandchildren. Especially for my eldest daughter, who I can't see often, I regularly send gifts, which she always appreciates. She had a boy and a girl a few years ago. Though we can't see each other often, the grandchildren always call us via video chat to thank us for the gifts. That's one of my joys. My younger daughter has a big family with 3 boys and a girl. She works, but her eldest recently started playing soccer, so she seems particularly busy. Sometimes, we take care of her children at our house. And my eldest son and his wife have a boy. They live with us, but he doesn't talk to me much lately, maybe because he's in his rebellious phase. However, having many grandchildren and seeing them all healthy and well is my happiness. But living together brings its own set of problems. In the past, a mother-in-law's word was law, and I never dared to defy mine. She was strict. I don't want to be like that, but there are things I must teach. Living here in the countryside, there's a minimum level of community and family interaction that my eldest son needs to know, or he'll struggle. That's why I asked Karen, my daughter-in-law, to help with things like arranging Christmas cards and gifts for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Since we own properties and my eldest son is set to inherit them, these relationships are very important. I often tell him this. However, he responds with, "You're so annoying, leave me alone," and seems to dislike me and my husband, who supports me. And when I talk to Karen, she doesn't want to help either. Come Thanksgiving, she'd say she's traveling with friends and leave the house, and for Christmas, she'd go to her parents' house from mid-November through the New Year's holidays. I never tell her not to go. In fact, I think she should visit her parents. But such a long holiday break is unheard of. And Karen's parents live in the same city, just in a neighboring school district. They could meet anytime, not just during the holidays. So, while I'm dissatisfied with her long visits home, I end up doing the end-of-year cleaning of our large house all by myself. Seeing my struggle, my younger daughter and her children started helping out a few years ago, which has been a relief, but I really think it's Karen's responsibility, as she lives here. I've mentioned it to my eldest son, but he doesn't seem to say anything to Karen. And my son, busy with work, doesn't bother to help either. Contrastingly, my younger daughter helps with arranging presents and making Christmas cards even on her precious days off. She's truly a godsend. I've had my reservations about Karen's behavior in everyday life. She's a stay-at-home mom and is home every day. She does drive the grandkids to and from school and tutoring, but she doesn't do housework. She barely manages the laundry, but only their own clothes, never touching ours. I've compromised, thinking it's okay as long as they handle their own laundry. After all, family or not, there's still other people. I thought it would be great if we could just do it for ourselves. However, she'll say, "Sarah, I'm leaving the laundry here," dumping muddy clothes or items needing hand washing into our basket, as if expecting me to do it. I recall since the grandkids were babies, I've been the one washing anything stained or needing hand washing. It didn't bother me before, but should I always be the one to do it? I once confronted her. Karen, wash your son's dirty clothes yourself. Don't just put them in our laundry basket. Her response was exaggerated. Of course, I'll do it when I can. But a little help would be nice, wouldn't it? I was taken aback by her words. I wanted to throw those words right back at her. I'm the one who wants family cooperation. There have been many such incidents. Her attitude, the local customs, the long-standing traditions. I think they're the cause, and I understand why she might dislike them. Being family doesn't mean you don't need to be considerate. That's why I've always tried to be accommodating towards Karen. I've never forced her to attend gatherings. I've done what I can myself. Karen may be as she is, but there's no doubt she supports my eldest son and is devoted to the grandchild. We've managed to live together for over 10 years by finding a middle ground. And now, we're in December again. Today is my 60th birthday. But there's no celebratory mood, just as busy as every year. Karen went to her parents' house about half a month ago. In the evening, thinking I'd like something nice for my birthday dinner. I'm home. I heard from the entrance. Oh, Mike. You're early. It was my eldest son. He seems to have finished work early today. He handed me a large package. Here, for your 60th celebration. The bag was from a department store. I was surprised. Usually, my husband doesn't even respond properly when I talk to him. Even now, not a word of happy birthday, but the fact that he thought to celebrate touched me. Thank you, I'm so happy. My son gruffly said he'd change and left. My husband peeked in. What's that? Just something. I went back to the dining room and opened it. But the moment I saw what was inside, I froze. Quite a fancy lobster, my husband said with a wry smile. He knows I have a shellfish allergy. Although it's not severe. Just some itching if I eat it. My eldest son should know too, but it's no issue for cooking. After all, he's always loved lobster, so it's often been on our table. I only avoid eating it, so maybe he forgot. I felt a bit disappointed, but mostly I was happy. With that in mind, I set the lobster on the table, which instantly looked lavish, and just made a simple meal with some frozen mackerel I had. My eldest son came back after showering. My husband then headed to the bathroom. Such a magnificent lobster. Thank you. I called out to my son from the kitchen. Yeah. He replied shortly, then looked away and sat down at the dining chair. Let's all eat together. My son started eating without responding. He's always been gruff and quiet. But it seems to have gotten worse since he got married. Maybe he doesn't like how I talk to Karen. So, I've been keeping my distance from him lately. But seeing his eyes light up at the sight of the lobster was just like when he was a child. I was happy, hoping for a family meal just between us today. My husband returned, and both of us sat down at the table. However, I was surprised when I saw the table. But I was shocked to see the lobster was just a shell. Where's the lobster? I asked my son. I ate it. You're allergic, Mom, he said nonchalantly. Stunned, my husband spoke for me. What do you mean? You sent her lobster knowing she can't eat it? It's better than nothing, right? My son didn't seem remorseful. Feeling pathetic for being happy and saddened by my son's actions, I quietly finished my meal and retreated to my room. What's the big deal? Turning 60 isn't special. If I can enjoy it, that's all that matters. My son said dismissively, and my husband scolded him. After calming down, I came out of my room. My husband and son were still in a tense mood. "I'll thank Karen for you. She prepared it, after all," my son told me amid the tension. "Why should Sarah thank Karen?" my husband yelled. "Enough, Henry. It's my fault for being happy about it." My son, showing anger, left the dining room. Feeling sorry for my husband, who looked at me with pity, I silently started cleaning up. Then I showered and went to the bedroom alone, leaving my husband behind. Entering the bedroom, I saw a missed call on my phone. It was Karen. It was late. But maybe she needed something, so I called her back. "Hello, Karen?" "Ah, Sarah. Did you get the gift?" "Yes." I responded briefly to her question. "Was the lobster delicious?" I replied to Karen. "The thing is, I have a mild allergy to shellfish. Mike ate it all by himself." "What?" Karen's voice trembled in response, and she suddenly sounded panicked. "Mike? Where's he now?" "I don't know. Maybe in his room?" "It's been quite a situation." When I said that, she sounded distraught. "Please go check on him." "I won't." I refused. "He'll come out if he feels remorseful." "It's not about that." Karen sounded frantic. I asked in response to the visibly panicked state. "What's going on? Why are you in such a hurry?" "Just go quickly." Reluctantly, I went to my eldest son and his wife's bedroom. It had been quite a while since my eldest son went to bed. I assumed he would be asleep by now, but I knocked and called out, "Mike? Are you sleeping?" There was no answer. "Seems he's asleep." I spoke to Karen, who was on the other end of the phone call. "I'll be right back," Karen said before hanging up. What was that about? I was about to return to the bedroom when it happened. "Mom!" A pained voice called out, making me look up. "Mike?" The voice was coming from the bathroom at the back of the second floor. The door was wide open, and I could see half of Mike's figure. "What's wrong?" I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Call an ambulance." Hearing my eldest son's pained voice, I called my husband and immediately phoned for an ambulance. I felt responsible. Honestly, that's what I thought. He must have caused himself gastroenteritis from overeating. After eating lobster, he had finished all the rice even after I left the room. I got into the ambulance with him, and my husband followed in the car. It was night, but they examined him right away. I got a call from Karen, and when I told her we were heading to the hospital in an ambulance, she hurried over. "Mike!" She called out our son's name as she burst into his hospital room. For now, he was on an 4-drip, going back and forth between the toilet and bed, but the doctor said his symptoms should settle down with time. I left our son in Karen's care and returned home with my husband. "It's overeating. His own fault," Henry said, echoing my thoughts. With Karen by our son's side, there seemed to be no need to worry. We rested easy that day and went to the hospital again the next day. "Food poisoning?" The next day, the doctor informed my husband and me of our son's diagnosis. It seemed it wasn't just overeating after all. When asked if anything comes to mind, I said, "We did eat mackerel yesterday." "Mackerel?" "It could be anisakaiasis. His symptoms have settled, so we can perform an endoscopy," the doctor suggested. "That would be best. We need to know the cause." I agreed. But the mackerel had been frozen and thoroughly cooked. I couldn't imagine it harboring anisakis. As I pondered this, the doctor explained the situation to my son. My son agreed to the endoscopy and changed into the examination gown provided by the nurse. The hospital room was now just me, my husband, my son, and my grandson Tom. Today happened to be a Saturday. My grandson, who was off from school, had come from Karen's parents' house early this morning. "It's all because of the meal Mom made," my son said, glaring at me. I had no words to return. Though not intentional, I felt responsible. "Why are you changing?" Karen, who had just returned, asked. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen her for a while. She must have been in the bathroom. I explained what the doctor had told me. "What? Is he okay to have an endoscopy when he's feeling sick?" Karen voiced her concern. "I'm in pain too and would rather not do it, but the symptoms aren't going away. It might be anisakiasis causing peritonitis. If it gets worse, it could even lead to surgery. And it's all because of Mom." Hearing my eldest son's words, Karen also looked at me. "But that mackerel was frozen. Anisakis should be okay if it's frozen, right? And it was well cooked." "But look at me now," my son shouted at me angrily. "Mom, is what you just said true?" the nurse who entered the room asked, opening the door. It was a relief to see her. It was my daughter, Emma. She worked as a nurse in this hospital. We had informed them yesterday that we were Emma's family. Having come to work, Emma must have heard from someone and come to check on us. Good morning," I greeted my daughter. "But is it true about the mackerel being frozen?" "It's true, it was properly frozen." Upon hearing this, Emma hurried out of the room. Shortly after, the doctor returned and asked me for confirmation. "Sarah, I heard the mackerel was frozen. Is that true?" I nodded at his words. "Then the likelihood of anisakis is extremely low. Anisakis are fine if frozen. Eating that wouldn't cause food poisoning. Did you eat anything else that might be of concern?" His words made me ponder. I had thought it was all because of the mackerel I cooked. And I thought again. Yesterday, we had mackerel, soup, and sautéed spinach. My husband and I ate it too, but we feel fine. Then I remembered something. Oh, but my son ate lobster alone. I didn't miss the change in Karen's expression at my words. Come to think of it, Karen had been disturbed the moment I mentioned yesterday that my eldest son had eaten lobster. She was the one who had urged me to go to the bedroom in a hurry. Thanks to her, I found my son in bad shape in the bathroom. "Karen, do you know something?" I asked. She stiffened. "Karen?" My son also called out to her. Karen fell silent. At that moment, their son, Tom, stopped playing his game and said, "Is that the lobster Mom bought a month ago?" "A month ago?" My eldest son, my husband, and I all turned our gaze to our grandson. "Yeah, the one I've been keeping in my room for a month. I took it with me when I went back to Grandpa's house yesterday, and I gave it to Dad." At his words, I turned pale. My eldest son also questioned her. "What do you mean? Wasn't it bought yesterday?" Then she began to speak. "So what? You were the one who said you'd send lobster for her 60th birthday celebration. That's why I bought it when it was cheap. What's wrong with that? Why were you hiding it in Tom's room?" My eldest son yelled at Karen. "You were the one who said Sarah was being annoying and it was just to irritate her. I thought a little stomach pain would do. I meant I wouldn't eat something I can't because I'm allergic to shellfish, just to spite her by eating it in front of her." Listening to their argument, my husband seemed completely angry. "Both of you are to blame. Apologize to Sarah." My husband's yelling echoed in the hospital room. I calmed him down. It was clear that both had acted with malice. We can't keep them in our house anymore, I declared. They stopped their arguing. I'm sorry. I went too far. My eldest son apologized, confused by my calm demeanor. Right. I can't even think of you as my son anymore. Leave the house once you're discharged, my husband added. Please wait. Henry. I'm really sorry. Karen collapsed on the spot. In the end, Mom was fine, so please forgive us, my son said, trying to gauge our reaction. But forgiveness was not in my heart. Take care then. I said only that. And we left the hospital, leaving the two behind. According to my daughter, they continued to blame each other after we left. Mike, Karen, calm down. Emma tried to soothe them, but the fight didn't stop. Emma, can I go home now? Tom, fed up with his parents, had returned to our house first. I hadn't even noticed his return since he went straight to his room. Ultimately, the atmosphere between the two remained hostile even after discharge. Karen stopped washing my son's clothes, and of course, I had no intention of doing it either. Eventually, they got divorced. Karen left our house with Tom. She was a daughter-in-law who often stayed away long and was absent when needed. I had been considerate all this time, but somehow I felt relieved. Let's live together happily like before, my eldest son suggested, but my husband got furious again and finally kicked him out of the house. We transferred the ownership of our properties and house to our eldest and second daughters. Although there was a gift tax, my husband laughed, saying it was better than leaving it to someone we disliked. The husbands of our daughters thanked us, and they redid the celebration for my 60th birthday. At that time, our eldest daughter came back from Spain to our house after several years, and we all had a great time. Seeing our grandchildren's smiling faces, I was truly happy. Later, our second daughter's family moved from their apartment to our house. The apartment was our property, too. We transferred its ownership to her, and it started generating rental income. Our eldest daughter was overjoyed as well, saying that thanks to the property she inherited, the whole family could visit us several times a year. Spending time with our real daughters was effortless and very relaxing. The family grew larger, and my husband seemed happy. Although I sometimes had to be careful around my second daughter's husband, he was a kind man who always looked after us. Honestly, I still can't forgive my eldest son and his ex-daughter-in-law, nor do I intend to in the future. But my eldest daughter taught me something. There's a Spanish proverb, living well is the best revenge. Don't you think it's a good saying? Betty said with a smile. Yes, it is. I smiled back. If there's any revenge to be had, it's for my husband and me to live happily.